Good evening. Welcome to the Community Awareness Committee's March 16th panel discussion. Our topic this evening is animal control. I am Trish Steiner, Chair of the Community Awareness Committee. For those of you joining us for the first time, the Community Awareness Committee is a committee of the Neighborhood Safety Commission. The Neighborhood Safety Commission was created on September 18th, 1999 by a resolution of the Cobb County Commissioners. The Neighborhood Safety Commission is comprised of 15 individuals appointed by the chairman and the district commissioners. It is the policy of the Neighborhood Safety Commission and the Community Awareness Committee to not discuss any specific individual, any specific past or present incident, or past or present cases. We welcome you and thank you for attending this evening, and welcome those of you who are watching on Cobb TV. Our committee members are Pearl Roberts and Joel Cope. We have cards available for the written questions. Please just raise your hand, and we will be glad to collect your cards throughout the evening discussion. Please turn your cell phones off or on silent, as your phone will interfere with the broadcasting of this discussion. Thank you. Our moderator this evening is Kim McCoy, Director, Victims Witness Unit, Office of the District Attorney, Cobb Judicial Circuit. We especially want to thank Kim for being our phenomenal moderator. Kim will now introduce our distinguished panel members to you.
Thank you, Trish, and thank you to the Neighborhood Safety Commission for once again planning a fabulous panel to be educational for our community. What we would like to do this evening is educate our community about animal control issues, about animal abuse issues, and talk a little bit about what your work is here in our community, as well as resources that are available. So before we get into that, the first thing that I would like to do is ask each of our panel members to introduce yourself, tell us who you are, where you work, a little bit about your agency, and what your role is with the issues of animal abuse or animal control. So we will start, Chris, with you, since you are in the first seat.
Thank you. My name is Chris Lanning. I'm the Deputy Chief Assistant Solicitor here in Cobb County. I work for our elected solicitor, Mr. Barry Morgan. We handle cases really in two formats. The way we handle animal control cases, animal abuse cases, is we start out in the magistrate court, ordinance violations here within the county, and then those cases, if they make their way over to state court for misdemeanor prosecution or any animal abuse case that is taken as a misdemeanor, we can handle those two cases in those two capacities.
Thank you, Chris. Sherwin?
Hi, my name is Sherwin Figueroa. I'm Assistant District Attorney. I work at the District Attorney's Office for our elected District Attorney, Vic Reynolds. I am assigned to a regular courtroom, one of our 10 Superior Court judges. However, I also am in charge and prosecute the animal abuse felony cases, myself and Teresa Schieffer. We are both prosecutors assigned to that, part of our animal abuse unit, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Detective Steve Hammond. I'm an animal cruelty investigator for Cobb County. I work for the Cobb County Police Department, but I'm assigned to animal control through the Department of Public Safety. My primary mission is to investigate cases of animal cruelty and animal fighting and bring those cases up for prosecution.
Thank you. Shanna?
My name is Shanna Luke. I am one of the operations managers for Cobb County Animal Control, and I'm actually one of the operations manager over the road department.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Captain Dan Farrell. I work for Cobb County Police Department. I am the former commander of the Animal Control Division and currently assigned to the Department of Public Safety, working as the executive officer for special projects.
Thank you, Captain. And Fran.
My name is Fran Jackson, and I started a group called Positive Supporters. We're a nonprofit group that raises money to support the shelter and also homeless and community animals. We do spay-neuters in Cobb County. We also did transports, and we do special projects for the shelter. We recently purchased the heat sensing meters so that the police officers in Cobb County will all be equipped on the road with a meter that they can, when the weather is bad and hot, go and find somebody who has left a dog or a cat or a person in the back seat. I also do the events at Cobb County. I do the May 15th is our Forever Fest, which is an adoption event, so we invite everybody to come to that. We also have June 18th is our Art, Barks, and Purrs. It's another fundraiser and another way for the community to see the animals at the shelter and also to come and meet the employees and the volunteers that do a great job there. My background is in rescue, and I do fostering, and I work with Fancy Feline Rescue also.
Thank you, Fran. So we're going to talk a little bit about, we've got a wide variety represented here, from abuse cases being prosecuted to police response to shelter response to the community response, and then to overall public safety issues with animal control issues. So we got a wide variety of things to cover. As a victim advocate here in Cobb County, one of the things that we deal with is domestic violence victims who do not want to leave their homes because they have pets in the home. And as you all know from your work in the animal environment, pets are often part of our families. So I think I'm going to start with Fran, if you don't mind, and ask you what resources are available, not only to just domestic violence victims, but if an elderly person needed to be removed from the home for some reason, what happens to those animals? What happens to the animals if people have to leave their home suddenly because of fire or anything of that nature? Can you tell us a little bit about what services we may offer those families for their pets?
I sure can. There's a great organization, a nonprofit called Ahimsa House, AHIMSA, and they will take in animals for families that have to leave. They are, I don't want to say a rescue group, but they will babysit your animals while you are in flux for your situation. Also, for anybody that has to leave, the shelter has a list of rescues that you can contact that can help you rehome your animals. It's very difficult to just find somebody to babysit your animals for a while, so we always suggest that you contact friends or neighbors or somebody if you just need a temporary stay. But if it's something where you're actually going to turn your animal over and you want to rehome it, we have lots of resources, and you can contact the shelter and find out some of that information.
Excellent. Thank you. So, Shanna, I want to start with you because we are talking about animal control. Tell us a little bit about really what the function of animal control here in Cobb is, kind of what your authority is, when you might get called. Just kind of give us an overview of your agency.
Okay. The Animal Control's mission statement is Cobb County Animal Control Unit is to enforce state laws and county ordinances pertaining to animal control and management, educate the community on responsible pet ownership, provide housing and care for homeless animals while coordinating their adoption when possible, and humane euthanasia when adoption is not possible. And I mean, we get called out for any kind of domestic animals running loose from, any kind of animal abuse. And also we have a shelter that we adopt out animals. And
Okay. So while your name is Animal Control, you're very akin to Humane Society type work.
We do. We have a shelter, and we also operate a road operations too, where we pick up animals.
Okay, great. And then for our prosecutors in the room, Chris and Sherwin, talk to us about, well, no, let's not go there first. Let's talk to the officer about animal cruelty cases. So when do you get involved in cases that are reported of animal cruelty or animal abuse, and then we'll move through how a case is prosecuted in the court system?
Cases will come to us a couple of different ways. Generally, our animal control officers will be the first responders. They'll go out, make contact with the public, start the investigation. They may call for additional assistance. In some cases, it's the police officer themselves become involved in it. They get involved, they start the investigation. They may have to call for assistance as well. And our job in the Animal Cruelty Investigation Unit is to follow up on that, provide the resources to the Cobb County Police Department, to Cobb County Animal Control, in an effort to build cases and bring good cases to the court.
Okay. And so Sherwin and Chris, talk to us about, because we have a state prosecution level or a state court prosecution level and a superior court prosecution level. So talk to us about what laws are in effect in each of your divisions to protect animals, and then how a general case might come through the system.
You want to start?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in what we do in the solicitor's office is primarily we deal with the animal control officers. I mean, in most of the cases that we get, they originate that an officer has gone out to the scene. An animal control officer has gone out to the scene. They've talked to someone, and our cases range. They go from, we do obviously handle the abuse cases. we don't handle the cases that rise to obviously that felony level, the more serious cases, but we do handle those cases where, animals have been malnourished, mistreated, things like that, that again aren't the extreme cases. But also what we handle is control of animals, animals that aren't properly vaccinated, animals that aren't on a leash, biting animals. So sometimes when those animals, their owners don't have them on leashes, things like that, and they bite another person or potentially bite another dog. So those cases start out in the magistrate court. We sort of work those up, a lot of those being ordinance violations. We can handle them in the magistrate court, but we have the ability on those, really on the abuse cases, we can bring them over to state court. We can bring them over, and the state law on the abuse statute for misdemeanors, it mirrors the county code. So we can bring that over, and we have the ability, if we want to prosecute those under a state law code section. It's treated like a standard misdemeanor, so we can punish those cases by up to $1,000 fine, 12 months in jail, other things that we think may go along with it. So we don't deal with the detectives quite as much because our cases just don't rise to that level. But that is sort of, that's what we do in the solicitor's office and sort of our track and how we prosecute cases.
In the district attorney's office, we handle felonies. Those are crimes punishable by more than a year in prison. Often I have direct contact with Detective Hammond from the very beginning. These cases are treated similar to any other person's crime. That means a crime against a person. In our situations, most of the time, always, our animal victims can't speak. So we have to go through circumstantial evidence, interview people who might have seen something, heard something. Usually our cases are a notebook full of evidence from Detective Hammond. Our cases do take a little longer because of the amount of evidence we have to go through in the presentation to the court, presentation to the grand jury to accept the indictment, to go forward with the process. Currently, we have around 10 cases that I am handling, and that's what we do at the felony level.
And what would be the maximum penalty?
In Georgia, the maximum for a first-time felony is 5 years. That's aggravated animal cruelty.
And there are progressive punishments?
There are for subsequent offenses. However, right now it's just 5. And hopefully, we did work on changing the law. There were some significant changes, but it's just 5 for now.
Okay. Always have a goal to work towards.
Yes.
All right. Fran, do you have something to add?
I'd like to add something. Our group got a camera, a very nice camera, and a video recorder so that they could have more accurate evidence in their cases. And Detective Hammond just recently told me that he's got several people in the animal control facility that have been trained to go out and do additional investigations, and we're looking for additional cameras. So you might say
Sure.
something
Part
about
of our goal with that is to become an independent unit, and we've sent 6 of our animal control officers through crime scene processing class. Our goal is to have 2 state-certified crime scene technicians on each shift, so that we'll be able to be an independent body. They'll be able to take and process those crime scenes just like our crime scene technicians do now for a person's type crime.
Okay, so let's stay with you for a second. You guys have talked about the amount of resources that are being put into this issue. How prevalent is the issue of animal abuse in Cobb County?
It's as we raise the awareness, we find more and more of it. And so part of our goal is to go out and educate the public. We're also educating our police officers and our animal control officers to help them know what the crimes are, understand those crimes, what raises to the appropriate level, whether it should be county ordinance or state charges. We're working through that. We're getting them accustomed to looking at the crimes and organized so that they can start to help bring those cases or recognize that they exist.
Excellent. So as with many crimes, as we increase awareness, we see a rise in the reports.
We do, and since we've started the program, which we started in April of last year, we've seen a significant number of cases come through the system, and as more and more people find we're there, we're getting more and more contacts. And the public is more interested because they see us prosecuting these crimes or carrying through with them. They want to bring them to our attention, which is always what we want.
Great. Excellent. Let's talk a little bit about funding. I'll come back to you. Let's talk a little bit about funding. Animal control is obviously part of Cobb County. So Shanna and Captain Farrell, tell us a little bit about, and then we'll ask Fran, because you've already talked about the nonprofit side of it a little bit. So let's talk to the three of you about where your funding comes from and what those funding needs might be.
Okay. You want to help out? No? Yeah, I can pick it up. We're just like any other county organization, and we fill out budget requests at the beginning of the year, just like every other department in the county does. We submit them for approval. It goes through the funding process and is voted on at the end by the Board of Commissioners on whatever funding that they're going to grant for our operations. And that's just to run our general operations of the shelter. So that handles all of our people that we have working on the road, basic kennel care of the animals. We actually do now provide veterinarian care for our animals, which is a little bit unusual in an animal shelter. We have a full-time certified veterinarian that works there, and so we can make sure that they get proper medical care. And outside of that, we also work through a donation fund from the community, and people come in every year and they donate money to the shelter, and then that money goes into a special donation account with the county. And that particular funding is something that we have overseen by our Animal Control Board. And if we need something special that would enhance the quality of the care for the animals or help our ability to get more animals adopted out of the shelter, then we can take that need to the Animal Control Board because it's something that may not be funded by the government itself. And that's those little extra things that we try to get. And we take that before the board, and if we have funding in our donation fund, then we may actually get approval to remove some of that funding to buy some of those extra things to help us out with our animals.
Excellent. So County Commission is good to animals as well as to
Actually,
a lot
they're
of
very good. And,
other
yeah.
nonprofit agencies in Cobb.
Absolutely.
Fran, do you have anything to add from the nonprofit sector?
I was just going to say that I'm totally nonprofit, and I don't work for the shelter. I'm not connected with them other than when I set up my organization, I set it up to help the shelter and to support it. And what I wanted to say about the animal abuse is it's very important for the public to know if you see something, say something. That's the key. And Detective Hammond is the one that you want to talk to and report things. You can call the shelter and report it also, but he will investigate it. And it's sadly a real problem in the community today, but it is becoming more aware, and we're able to prosecute more.
Great, thank you. Shanna, let's talk a little bit about how you get involved in a case. So animal control is called. You look into the complaint or the call that you've gotten. Do you have the authority to remove the animal from the owner if you think the animals are in danger? And then at what level do you make the determination to involve the police?
We do not have the right to remove an animal from an owner unless, if we think that an animal is being abused, it'll go before a judge, and the judge will make the decision. Luckily, we have Detective Hammond at our shelter now, so if we suspect animal abuse, we can just call him and he can go out. But our officers do make the first initial report.
So if someone calls on me for abusing an animal, which I don't even have pets, so okay. So if someone calls and complains against me that my animal is malnourished or being mistreated, you would come investigate that.
Yes,
you would make a determination to give me a violation, or you would turn it over to the police for investigation.
Correct.
Okay, great. All right. And so that violation goes in front of a judge, and on the violation, I can be fined for that violation. What happens if I get a second violation?
The fines will double.
Okay. What happens if I get a third violation?
They can triple, and it just depends on what the crime is, whether or not the judge will make the decision to take the animal away.
Okay, so the judge can determine to remove
Yes,
that
ma'am.
animal. And then does the animal go into your care?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then hopefully we can adopt it out and find it a better home.
Okay, excellent, very good.
There are cases where we can remove an animal if abuse is present. We obviously need due process of law and probable cause to do that. The county ordinance provides for us to do that. Also, Title IV through the state code allows us to do that as well. So there are circumstances where we can impound an animal for the safety of the animal or safety of the public.
Great, thank you. Sherwin?
With the once we started the animal abuse unit, For the first time in the history of Cobb County, we used some of the forfeiture laws in Title IV. Title IV is the area of the law specifically related to animals, and we were successful in a case of felony abuse, of removing an animal from the affected situation before even the case was decided or heard, and adopting it out. So that animal victim didn't have to sit at the shelter 22 hours a day, it can't even have visitors come see it. You know, it's a terrible life. So that was a very successful task we took on once the task force was created, of using laws to help these animal victims and ultimately save taxpayers money. They don't have to pay for the care and needs of the animal while the court case can go on 1, 2, who knows how many years.
Okay. So we've talked about some reporting animal cruelty or animal abuse type issues. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about what most people would call nuisances. Coyotes, bears, rabid animals, things of that nature. So I don't know who wants to start with that, but what happens if you have a problem in your neighborhood with coyotes or bears or other rabid animals? How do we get our community involved in that process?
Well, Department of Natural Resources actually handles most wildlife, but we do come out if it is injured, sick, if it has bitten a human or a domestic animal. So anytime that any of those happen, if you think there's anything wrong, there's no reason not to call us.
And how would they get DNR involved?
I have their phone number. Their phone number is 1-800-336-2661, and their website is www.gadnr.org.
And on the reporting, if I suspect an animal is being abused or is malnourished, do I call 911 or do I call animal control directly?
You can, if you feel that a law has been violated or you believe that an animal rises to the level of a crime, then by all means call 911. Our animal control office has a dispatcher during the daytime hours. That number is 770-499-4136. I'm sorry. But you can always call 911 and they can forward the call over. We want people to report the crimes. Feel free to report those crimes. Just because it's an animal doesn't mean you shouldn't call 911. We want to go ahead and report that, again, because it is a crime.
Okay. And I'm going to stay with this issue of nuisance animals, although we know we call DNR for the issue. Are there things we can do to protect ourselves from coyotes or bears or other, or any type of rabid animal that might come? Are there things we can do to protect our property or to kind of dissuade them from coming on?
Definitely put up any outside feeding of animals, no cat food, no dog food outside. Make sure small animals are up at night, especially. If you can't keep, if you have a dog that you have to keep outside, make sure it's in a fence. Garbage cans definitely have lids on them. That's the biggest thing. Just no food source. Get no food sources outside. That's what attracts the wild animals.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the shelter component. Obviously, you take cats and dogs. What other types of animals will you house or care for?
We house every animal. Every animal, from exotic animals to farm animals. We have a barn. We take care of horses, pigs, cows, everything. Any kind of animal can come to us.
What's the most unusual animal you've had?
We had a monkey about 10 years ago. That was pretty interesting. But we've had all kinds. We've had alligators.
What was that big stork or that pelican that came?
A pelican. We did have a pelican. Yeah. We had a lion, a tiger, and a bear cub at one point.
Okay. Oh my. Oh my. Fran.
Yes.
From the nonprofit perspective, you probably have some information for us about rescues, rescue organizations, how to contact rescue organizations. So educate us a little bit about what a rescue organization is and how we can contact those organizations.
Okay. There's a great website called spotsociety.org. And if you go on that, there's a tab that you can click on to see what rescue groups are available in Georgia. And they're broken down also by breeds. Most of the purebred rescue groups will only take the purebreds, but there's a lot of rescue groups that will take the mutts. And the shelter also has a list of those that you can contact, you can pick up at the shelter. Rescues keep their animals until they're adopted or they pass away. And the important thing for the public to know is if you rescue an animal from the shelter or the rescue, you actually rescue two animals. You rescue the one that you've taken and you rescue the one that takes its place. So go and rescue animals. Get them from the shelter or get them from a rescue group.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about other types of things that people might consider a pet. Detective Hammond, you may be the most appropriate to answer this question. Is it legal to keep a wild animal?
It is not.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about where that line is.
Well, anything that's an indigenous animal to the state of Georgia, you're not allowed to keep as a pet. Some wild animals you can keep with a license, and you have to be licensed through the state to maintain that animal. But any normally wild animal you cannot maintain or keep.
Okay. Give us an example of what we could get a license for.
You might get a license for a lion. There are some of those out. There are some notable people that own those, and they do have to have a license for that and appropriate enclosure. It's not a simple process to get a license through that, and again, they have to be licensed through the state.
And what would you consider an indigenous wild animal?
Raccoon or a possum is easy enough. We have a variety of those, or an abundance of them rather, and you can't keep those as pets.
How about a deer?
You cannot keep a deer as a pet either.
Flying squirrel?
Flying squirrels, no.
Okay. Any other examples anybody wants to give of animals? Hedgehogs?
What do they do if they find an injured squirrel or an injured bird, injured rabbit?
Call us.
Call you?
Yes, we'll come pick up any injured wildlife.
Okay. Is our shelter a no-kill shelter? And exactly what does that term mean?
We are not a no-kill shelter. We do have to euthanize, unfortunately, but we have about an 85% adoption rate, so we have a very high adoption rate.
Very nice. So what is the definition of a no-kill shelter?
Would you like me to take that one? Okay. A no-kill shelter is what basically the rescues do. I mean, they do not put down except for injury. Cobb County Animal Control is an open admission shelter, which means they have to take any animal that is presented to them and take it in. Correct?
Yeah, and I'd like to expand on that just a little bit, and so that people understand what Cobb County Animal Control is all about, and specifically our shelter. And believe it or not, we actually take in anywhere from 10 to 12,000 animals a year, and that come through our doors. And by being an open intake shelter means if someone shows up at our front door and they want to turn their animal into us because they don't want it anymore, then we have to take that animal, and as part of a service that we provide for the community. And what people don't understand is we do have a limited number of cages in there, and we can house up to maybe 300 animals in our shelter, which would put us at really being overcrowded, but we could probably house about 300 of those animals. So if you bring an animal to us, and that's the 301st animal that comes into our shelter, we're going to have to make a decision on what we're going to do with it. And because we only have so much space, and we're just completely limited, and we have no other choice. In those cases, then, yes, euthanasia is an option for us, and that we would have to do. Now, our shelter works extremely hard with our rescue groups, with our volunteer organizations. We do run a very strong adoption rate out of our shelter, and we're trying to make that even better. So that the only animals that we put down would be just for humane reasons, because they come in and they're so sick and unhealthy we would have to put them down, or because they're aggressive and it's something that we can't put back into the community. And we started temperament testing some of our animals now, some of our larger animals, so that we can try to protect people that are adopting, to make sure that the animal has a good temperament to be taken home and to be a pet. And our veterinarian goes through there, and she can actually give a veterinarian's opinion if an animal's health is to a point that it's really not rehomable, and for humane reasons that animal should be put down. And the largest majority of the animals that we actually euthanize in our shelter now are animals that are either aggressive towards humans, or they're actually too sick for us to go out and to rehome.
Okay, and let's stay with the shelter information just a little bit. How many employees are there in the shelter? Are they certified as police officers, or what are their qualifications? Where do you post your jobs? And what are your hours of operation?
Well, I'll start off with this. We've got 4 job openings there. So, hey, you can go to cobbcounty.org and click on employment on the website and go there, and you'll find the Animal Control Officer 1 position. They're not sworn as far as like what a police officer would be sworn. And so they're civilian employees. They don't have arrest powers, but they do have the power to go out and cite you under the county ordinances. And so they're going to do just like a code enforcement officer would cite you for having your car parked in the wrong place and you're violating that county ordinance. Animal control officers go out and they focus on enforcing just the animal control ordinances in the county. And so they would cite you for those offenses. Most of our officers are going to start off working inside our shelter, and they come in and they receive their initial training there. There is no technical statewide certification for an animal control officer, but we create our own training program for them, and we run them too, teaching them animal care, behavior of animals. They learn how to give shots to animals, and just your basic care of the animal. Once they transfer out to the road, they actually go through a field training process where they learn how to enforce county ordinances. And that's where they're going to start learning things about the state laws, and what do I need to actually write this citation. And we have training officers on the road that work with them. And so, yes, you can come in there and be an animal control officer. It's kind of gets your foot into the door if you like that type of work. And I think most of the people we have enjoy a pretty good career there. We've got about 50 employees. Those stay pretty evenly split between the shelter and the road in some specialty positions. So, at any given time, we've got about a dozen people assigned that just for the care of the animals, and about a dozen people assigned on the road. And then we have other positions that are specialty positions inside the shelter.
So you're 24/7.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So I want to remind our live audience that we do take questions up. If any of you have questions that you want to send up, we'll be glad to address those. I also know that we have some community members in the audience who represent organizations, and we'll be happy to share the information about your organization as well, because we're here to educate the community about issues that are related to animals. So I want to go back a little bit to this issue of offenders. So Chris and Sherwin, put your hats back on.
Okay.
Talk a little bit about offenders. Sherwin, you mentioned to us that 5 years is the max. Chris, at the misdemeanor level, if a multiple offender comes back, what happens with a repeat offender at the misdemeanor level?
At the misdemeanor level, multiple violations, a couple of things can happen. Crimes can be treated as high and aggravated misdemeanors, meaning any jail time that comes along that goes with a case. There's no way for them to get any type of good time, anything like that with the jail. They would serve every day of it. But I believe that with animal control or with animal abuse, I believe that multiple offenders, they do become felonies after a first offense. If you have a conviction, and if it did happen again, even if it's something that would be a misdemeanor level crime, if you have a history of it, it can be prosecuted as a felony.
Okay.
I forget your question.
Well, you talked about the level of offenses at the felony level, but let's talk, because at the felony level and at the misdemeanor level, if an offender is sentenced to probation, or what we now call community supervision, what does that community supervision look like for the offender? Are they checked on? Do they check for dogs or cats in the home?
Sure.
What does that look like?
Okay, thank you. Normally at a felony level, it's safe to say all of the cases we've prosecuted require a mental health evaluation and to follow recommended treatment. That is actually something that's in the statute, because the legislature has realized that a lot of mental health illnesses correlate and have animal abuse elements. So that's a very important thing we demand of anyone going on probation from a felony offense regarding dealing with animals. Another thing is we always require that during the phase of probation, the offender cannot have or affiliate with any animals. And that comes from the sense that animals are a privilege, they're not a right, and when you offend or abuse them, you lose that privilege. And so we always demand that. On top of that, we demand a Fourth Amendment waiver. That is a waiver to their right to be searched and seized. They give that up so that our probation officer can go in, make sure they do not have any animals in their home or in their possession. They also can't work or do community service with animals. So those are some of the staples of our sentence, and psychological help, which I mentioned. But yes, they are monitored because of the research and the awareness we have that people who offend animals are more likely to offend more vulnerable people, and that is children, the elderly, and domestic violence, intimate partner situations. So we want to monitor these individuals, make sure they do not go on, as we say, escalate or graduate to more serious crimes.
And I would echo what Sherwin said. Although in state court we don't have the length of the sentence in the time frame we work with, when we do see those cases in state court, we do ask for psychological evaluations. We do put in the conditions that they're not to have, that the offender is not to have any animals at their home, anything like that. And I would echo what Sherwin said, especially in regards to how you can see the correlation between those individuals that abuse animals and then abusing people down the line. We have a domestic violence court in Cobb County State Court. I run that program, and it's not just anecdotal. It's kind of on a weekly basis that we have these calendars, and we unfortunately have entirely too many offenders that commit domestic violence offenses here in the county. But you can start to see those cases, and you do see a pattern. You see where when you start interviewing witnesses, you interview victims in cases, and you start to delve into some of those questions and the things that are in their past, that quite often, unfortunately, there are those instances where those people have, there are allegations that they've abused animals. There's someone that has done something horrible to a dog or a family pet or something like that in anger or something like that. And so that is one of those areas where, again, we have to take it seriously. We have to stop these at kind of the forefront when we get these animal cases and understand that it's about the animals and those animal victims we have, but it's also protecting the community going forward. If we can take care of these cases on the front end and treat them appropriately, we can hopefully cut down on some of those instances of violence against people as well.
Great, and we know from the work that the three of us do especially, that there is a huge correlation between domestic violence, pet abuse, child abuse, pet abuse. So we know to take those allegations seriously. From a public safety standpoint, are our officers trained to recognize those correlations between animal abuse, and persons abuse? And do you know about that type of training that our officers are receiving?
Yeah, I can jump that, and Steve may have something to add in with it. But absolutely, they understand what animal abuse is. And but to be quite honest with you, it wasn't something in the past that our police department really dealt with that often. And hence why we started last year with our animal cruelty unit, and we worked to have an investigator assigned from the police department specifically at animal control. And what our plans are with that was to get him the specialty training that he needed to go out and become an expert in the area of these animal cruelty cases. And then now we're taking that and we're bringing it back to our police department in the form of our annual training classes that all of our departments, our officers go through every year. And so we're taking the knowledge that Steve has picked up now, we're bringing it back in our annual training, and we're educating all of our police officers about it. That's why we really feel like a lot of these animal abuse cases will continue to grow, because as our police officers get better trained and they become more familiar with it, and they also have an easy access to ask an expert about the case any time of the day or night, they have his number to call, then we believe those cases will continue to grow throughout the county. Because quite frankly, most of the time in the past, they either weren't recognized or the officer that was there really didn't know what to do with it, or he assumed that animal control would handle a felony type case for an animal cruelty, and he would write a report on it, and then no one would ever follow up. So we've made that correction last year by bringing in a cruelty investigator.
Great, thank you. So sometimes it takes an individual person with passion for the issue to spread that passion to other people.
Absolutely, it takes a team.
And so speaking of that passion, I personally have friends, and we know of people in our community whose passion it is to work with feral animals, to feed feral animals, to check on feral animals. Does the shelter have a relationship with those people, and how would you encourage them to be involved with the shelter if not?
I guess that's going to be mine because I did some research on that question. First, let me talk about what a feral cat is. A feral cat is actually a descendant of a domestic cat that lives in the wild. They generally lack social skills or for interaction with humans, and they're not suitable as pets, and therefore they're not adoptable through our shelter system. We don't want to try to adopt that feral animal out. There are some trap, neuter, vaccinate, and return programs. We are involved in a pilot program at this point with Best Friends Animal Society. And through that, they will go out, they will either take the trapped animals that come into our shelter, or they will trap those animals on an individual's property. They will bring them in, they will hold them for about 24 hours. After that, they will neuter or spay. They will vaccinate them where necessary, and then they will return them to that location if the property owner gives them permission to do that. If the property owner says, no, I don't want those feral cats back on my property, then they'll find another location to rehome them. When I've talked with them, generally what they try to do is get them into a barn situation where there are plenty of rodents, food available to them, where they're not a nuisance to anybody else. The program's been pretty successful. We've got some numbers for February with them. During the month of February, they took 48 unadoptable cats from our animal shelter. They were vaccinated, sterilized, and returned to where they were first originally impounded. They also took 58 cats that they trapped in the field. Those were vaccinated, sterilized, and returned to their location. And none of the owners or the property owners where those cats were first trapped at objected to them coming back. By doing a program like this, the feral cat colonies, the females in the colony can sense when the colony starts to get smaller. So as we trap those animals out and we don't return them, the female cats will become in season more often, and thus they'll produce more cats. So by bringing them out, sterilizing them, and then returning them, the colony stays the same size, and through the years, as those cats begin to die off, the colonies will get smaller and smaller.
Okay. So you gave us an example of, one example of unadoptable. Shanna, you also mentioned the word unadoptable. Tell us a little bit more about that. What would be an unadoptable animal?
An aggressive animal, something that's bitten in the past, would possibly be an unadoptable animal unless somebody could come in and do some training with it.
Okay. And Captain Dan, you mentioned training.
Yes.
You mentioned that some of your officers are specifically trained in temperament testing.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit more about that. What does that mean and what does that look like?
Yeah, that's something that we started towards the end of last year, and it was a several month-long training process that they've been going through to get certified to temperament test an animal. And basically what it does is it trains one of our officers in the shelter to take an animal and to separate it from the rest of the animals in the shelter. And they run through a series of tests with it. And it's testing how the animal reacts to certain situations, such as if we have the food on the ground for the animal and you reach to take the food bowl from the animal while it's eating, does the animal become aggressive? Is it a food aggressive animal? How does it interact with other animals? Is it animal to animal aggressive? And through this series of testing, then they can score this animal to decide how well it would behave in the environment when we rehome it again. And what we're really trying to do in that is we're trying to go through and make sure that for especially our larger animals that can cause serious harm to people, that we've done our part to temperament test the animal, and when you take it home with your family, that you can feel like you're actually getting a safe animal from us, and it's going to be a great family pet. And, the animals are strays that come into our shelter, so we don't really have a history of them. And so we don't know if they've been aggressive in the past or not. And this is one way for us to really add a little bit of value to what you're adopting there, and some assurance to our adopters that when they do get an animal from us, that animal has gone through at least a scientific testing with it, and it passed those tests, and we believe it will be a good pet.
Okay, thank you. Shanna, when the animals come into the shelter, do they immediately get treatment? You've told us you have a vet on staff. So when an animal comes into the shelter, do they immediately go through some sort of triage or care, treatment? You know what I'm trying to ask. Tell us about that.
They do. They get a series of vaccines when they come in. They're evaluated by our animal care specialist. They don't see the vet quite yet unless it's something obvious. Then they will notify the vet and she'll look at it immediately. And then they are put into hopefully the adoption area where they can be adopted out. If they're strays, they're held for 7 days to wait for the owner to reclaim if possible. And then they're put up for adoption. If their owner turns in, then they're immediately put up for adoption.
And do you chip animals there?
We do, on adoption. we
Tell
do.
us what that means.
It's a microchip. If it comes into a shelter or a vet clinic, they'll use a microchip scanner. It pulls up a series of numbers. You call the company, and it'll tell you who the owner is. And hopefully, it's a great way to get animals back home.
Okay?
And
we've
what
all
you should
heard
be very proud of is this shelter fixes all animals before they go out because you've got the vet on staff. And you don't have that at most of the shelters.
Okay, I know what you mean by fixing. Tell the audience.
They spay and neuter them before they go out to prevent the unwanted litters. And they should be commended for that. It is really a great thing.
Yeah, and to give an example of how much of an effect that actually has on our community with our stray animals, if you go back to prior to us having a veterinarian working on staff and us going through and spay and neutering all the animals that are adopted and leave out of our shelter, we were taking in on an average of 17 to 20,000 animals a year. Okay, since our vets come on staff, and now we do spay neuter everything that goes out the door, that's almost in half. It's down most of the time around the 10,000 mark. I believe at the end of last year, we were hoping to go under 10,000. And the only change we've truly made in our community is we're spay neutering every animal that's going out of there, and we're not having those unwanted litters of puppies.
Okay? So, Shanna, talk to us about the adoption process. What are the regulations for that? Are there fees for that? We know they're spayed and neutered before they leave the shelter. And then who would qualify to adopt from your shelter?
We take anybody. You don't have to be a Cobb County citizen. It's a $115 adoption fee. And we do the spay neuter. We do the microchip. We do the first set of shots.
Rabies?
And rabies, yes.
Okay. We have a couple of questions about some community partnerships. We talked a little bit about nonprofits and how you assist and some other programs like a HIMSA House and places like that. One of the questions is about a system that it seems to be working well for training dogs from the shelter to do a prisoner companion type program or prisoner training program. So has anyone heard of that? Or I know we know, Sherwin, about accompaniment dogs for victims in the court system. But talk a little bit about where animals can be used in the community for help, and then specifically if anyone knows about this prisoner training program.
Yeah, I know a little bit about it because they approached our shelter about getting into that program. One of the companies, they call it Jail Dogs, and it's where they basically put an animal with an inmate inside the jail, and that inmate works to train the animal and to socialize the animal, and in turn the inmate gets the contact from the animal, and they believe it's a good behavioral program for prisoners. Especially they'll hit certain programs like people that have been involved in an abusive situation throughout their life, and they may be in jail for whatever reason, but they come from an abused background, and they'll pair them up with these types of animals in the jail because it's almost a therapeutical type situation. It's something that Cobb Animal Control wouldn't have an issue with because it's not a program that we would actually operate, and that would fall under the Sheriff's Department to have to want to take on that type of a responsibility. And as you can imagine, there's quite a bit of an infrastructure for a program like that of having an animal inside a jail, and just from sanitation and liability factors if the animal bit someone or things like that. So the Sheriff's Department would be the one that would have to spearhead that program. We do have plenty of animals we could give them, and if they wanted to work that, but that would be on them to spearhead it. And some of the other organizations that we've worked with, and there's a couple that take animals and they train them as service dogs for vets coming back with PTSD. And we've had quite a few successful cases with that. And they'll pick certain breeds of animals from us that they think are going to be good at that type of an environment, and they'll train them to be service dogs, and then they donate them to veterans that are coming back from overseas that have extreme cases of PTSD. And we've also worked through the Georgia Department of Agriculture with some of the beagles that have come out that they use to work in some of their properties and some of the things that they do. So those are some successful partnerships that we had that we would always like to increase and get more animals out, especially in that service industry with these military vets, because the people that have been doing that have really seen a very positive effect on it. Matter of fact, we had some people come back that were traveling back down to Florida with the animal that they picked up, and the lady told me, hey, this animal has saved my husband's life. And literally, he has PTSD so bad that without this animal around, he basically freezes and loses control. And this animal's changed his entire life and his personality. So they wanted to come by and thank us for donating the animal out so that it could be trained to be with him. So those are great programs.
We also have Cooper's Cupboard and some other food banks that provide food if you qualify, and you can find out information through the shelter. But it keeps animals, somebody that might just need a little help for a little bit of time, that does not have food for their dog or cat, can get help through the food banks and keep their pet in their home so they don't wind up in the shelter.
Great, thank you. Sherwin, do you have some information about court companion animals?
There's canine cellmates. They operate out of Fulton County. They have been successful in doing that. They teach the job skills of grooming the pets to the inmates. There's also a prison in Georgia where the female prisoners work with the horses, and that's seen as positive as well. And I personally would love to see it in our county, but yes, our sheriff would have to decide on that.
And then there are programs all across the country. I recently learned that Bartow County is the first court system, unfortunately Cobb was not, to have a court companion dog. And that dog will be available in the court system to go to court with victims, particularly children, to help calm them down and just be a support for them. So that's a great service as well. I want to stick with the shelter information just a little bit and ask about your work or your partnership with rescue organizations and or local dog groups or local dog clubs. Do you partner with those agencies? And if so, what do those partnerships look like?
We have hundreds of, and probably, at least hundreds of animals that go up to rescue groups. We work with numerous rescue groups. We actually have a part-time employee that is a rescue coordinator that works hand in hand with all the rescues, and we're hopefully getting another part-time person to help her because it's an everyday thing, and we need more than 29 hours. We need a lot. So it's a great relationship.
Okay. And Captain Farrell, you talked a little bit about some of the specific training and the fact that you have 4 slots available in your agency.
Absolutely.
What type of training, does an employee receive specific training for a specific animal or just training in general?
And Shannon may be able to answer some of those better than me, but obviously there's different things that you're going to do with a dog versus a cat. And the main animals that we have in the shelter are dogs and cats. We do have some people in our shelter that one used to work for the DNR, and so he's our exotic animal expert. When we have anything kind of crazy comes in, we typically go to him for that specific animals, and we do get some animals that come in that you wouldn't believe. And so we'll typically go to them, but most of our employees are trained on really just the domestic animals. And they have some horse training. We have a couple of employees that know a little bit about the horse situation and the farm type animals, but most of our employees are just strictly really the dog and cat.
Shannon, anything to add?
We are putting together some horse training classes because we do want to get better with large animals because we do still have some farms in Cobb County, but mostly we are domestic cat and dog.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit. I want to go back to Detective Hammond because we have used the word abuse a lot. Tell us what that word means in relation to the abuse of animals.
Well, you have neglect and then you have cruelty. And neglect and cruelty both kind of fall under abuse. Neglect, if you're not caring for your animal, providing it veterinary care, providing it adequate food, water, sanitation, that's neglect that can rise to the level of cruelty if you allow it to go long enough. Then your cruelty itself could be a physical act toward that animal, maybe causing harm or unjustified harm or pain and suffering to the animal, and that would more fall under cruelty.
What about what a teenager believes is a prank of tying fireworks to a cat or a dog?
That's cruelty. That's not justifiable. That's unjustifiable pain and suffering. It puts stress on the animal, and although the teenager may think it's funny, it's not, and it certainly isn't to the animal or the owner.
Especially not to the animal, and certainly not to the owner.
And it's not funny to me either. So,
right, because many of us believe that our pets are part of our family.
They are.
And obviously all of our panel members have a passion for that issue as well. So when those incidents do become abuse, Sherwin and Chris, we know that there are ways to look up offenders. There are ways to track offenders, particularly with domestic violence, or protective order registries, as well as sexual abuse registries. Do we have a registry for animal abusers?
We do not. Some states like New Jersey have implemented that. There's lots of issues in starting a registry, requirements of who and what will qualify. For example, you said someone who didn't properly feed their animal versus someone who was absolutely just cruel and unusual punishment on the animal. The thing with misdemeanor or felony crimes to animals, that will always be on a defendant's criminal history. Unfortunately, with ordinances as tickets, even a speeding ticket stays on our driving record. However, ordinances do not. So as they escalate or become more serious with the task force, I rely on our animal control officers to let me or some of the other prosecutors know that this requires more attention. It should be removed from the magistrate court and approached by the state or superior court judges.
Thank you. We've also mentioned the term foster several different times. Is an animal foster home like what we would think as a child foster home? If not, what's the difference? And if someone is interested in fostering animals, how does that process go about?
Let me pick it. Okay. Yeah, it's very similar to what you would do if you were foster homing a child. The theory behind the animal foster home is that they would take it out of our shelter, they would provide a temporary home for the animal, and then once we found somewhere suitable to have the animal adopted, then that animal would move into the adoption system for a permanent home. So in that aspect of it, it would be very similar to what you would do with a foster home for a child that was waiting for a permanent residence. We don't actually have a very expansive program involved in that at this time, and there's a reason why, and it involves just physical people to go out and actually inspect these homes. Per the state law, we actually have to go out and inspect the homes, and we have to inspect them on a regular basis if you're going to be fostering animals. Because just because the animal leaves Cobb County Animal Shelter, it's still our responsibility that it's in a proper home, so we're still responsible for that. And so we have to go out and document that we've inspected the home, the animal's being properly cared for while it's in that foster care. And quite frankly, we don't have enough people to go out and inspect a whole lot of houses because that's extremely time-consuming. And so right now we really don't have a foster program that's in effect. One of the things that we have been discussing is maybe a medical foster program, and something that we could do on a smaller basis for the animals that come in that are maybe too young to be adopted out, but the shelter environment is something that could cause them harm just from being there. An animal that comes in that's injured, it may have been hit by a car, it has a broken leg, and we could put it in a foster home so that it could be better cared for in a one-on-one type home environment. And then once that animal is better, then it can come back to the shelter and enter the adoption process. Or once the animal gets a little bit older, it could come back to the shelter and enter the adoption process. Because right now we really don't have the resources in the shelter to give that type of a specific care for those animals. So opening a medical foster program would be something that would be reasonable in our county, and it's something that we've been researching and looking into doing. And hopefully, if that all goes well, we'll kick that off here soon this year.
Great, thank you.
But
Frank?
what they really do is you can volunteer with a rescue group who will then pull an animal from the shelter, and it goes into their program, and you become a foster for them. So we really encourage the public to do that because, again, that's another way, a great way to get these animals out of the shelter and into foster homes.
And how do you learn about the rescue groups?
Again, you can go to spotsociety.org, and if you like Cocker Spaniels, you can contact the Cocker Spaniel Rescue and say, I'd love to become a foster. And a lot of times the shelter will give you that information also if you want to.
Great, thank you. So I want to remind the audience that we're getting close to our wrap-up time, so if there are final questions or comments that you'd like to share, please be sure to send those up. I have two final questions for each of the panel members. Actually, I have one last question, and that's about this issue of trap and release. A question came to us earlier about the trap and release. What does that mean? What does that look like? And I have no idea how to ask that question, so trap and release. Detective?
All right, well, the feral cats are humanely trapped. They use a box-type trap, a cage trap. The animals are not harmed when they're trapped. Once we pick that trap up, or that the animal is brought to us or to the organization that's doing the TNR, the animals are neutered, they're spayed, and then they return back to the location they were trapped at if the property owner is okay with having the animals back. If they don't want them back, then they'll find a new location for them. But those animals are brought in, they're checked out. If they're in very poor condition, their health is so poor that they're not going to thrive at all, then there is a chance for euthanization at that point. Otherwise, they're vaccinated in some programs, and then and obviously the spay neuter, and then they're returned back to the wild.
Okay. Anybody else want to expand on that issue? Okay. Yeah, Sherwin?
Some counties have laws that don't encourage that behavior because they say once you trap the animal, you are responsible for it, and therefore there may be repercussions. We are not that way in Cobb County.
And the animal, a good point about that is it is legal. The animal is not owned by anybody. So it's not a case of where you've brought it in and when you take it back out, you've actually abandoned that animal. You're just returning it back to its original situation or original location and having been spayed, neutered, and vaccinated.
Okay.
So there is no abandonment that occurs because the animal was not owned to begin with. It's a wild animal or wild to the area.
Okay. And Detective, you mentioned earlier animal fighting. Mm-hmm. Do we have that in Cobb County? I don't want to know case specifics, but
yes,
tell us how that investigation would happen.
We get the information from it. Sometimes it will come from our patrol officers on the street. Maybe a concerned citizen will call and say, this is going on in my neighborhood, or I saw this. Again, see something, say something. They report that. We begin the investigation into that. Where we need to, we can bring in additional resources from our specialty units within the county that are assigned to the Cobb County Police Department, and that investigation would progress forward. We see with these investigations that they're typically complicated. They're also very large, and they're the tip of the iceberg for other crimes. We're going to see guns, drugs, money. We've even seen prostitution that does accompany it as well.
Okay.
And what most of the people in the community are actually going to see on that are the dog training devices. And you may not see the actual animal fighting going on, but your neighbor in his backyard has pit bulls that are wearing a 40-pound chain around their neck, and they're dragging that around, or they'll actually physically tie weights around their neck to make them stronger. They have things where they'll get them to bite and to hang them from trees and to get their jaw muscles stronger. Treadmills in the backyard to get their endurance up. When you see things like that in your neighbor's property, then that's when you want to alert animal control of that and let us open an investigation on it and find out. Many of those acts by themselves will be considered cruelty for the animal, but it's typically going to be indicative of a bigger thing where we're doing dog fighting.
Great, thank you.
And with that too, there are rewards for that through the Humane Society of the United States. So if you report that, you can bring that to us. It leads to an arrest. They will provide a $5,000 reward in dog fighting cases, and they're pretty liberal about giving that out.
Thank you. So, Captain Dan, I have a specific question for you, but as the moderator, I'm going to take some liberty and expand it to the rest of the panel members as well, so y'all
Okay.
can think about your answer. Captain Dan, if you could wave a magic wand to make a wish, what would you wish for to help our shelter operation?
That's a huge, huge question. The shelter needs so many things, but I think if I could say one thing that I could wave the magic wand on, it would be awareness and for our community. Because I think the thing that we miss more than anything is community awareness of what goes on in that shelter. And I'll be honest with you, I've lived in Cobb County for over 45 years now, so that's my place of birth. And I've driven past that shelter thousands of times and never even knew what it was. And, and once I became aware of the situation of how many animals actually come in there, how many really fantastic pets come through that place that can be readopted and rehomed, it opened my eyes to a lot. And if I could wave that magic wand across our community where we have 750 to 800,000 people in the community, if you're looking for a new pet, give the shelter a shot first and come down there and see it, because that awareness right there would truly make a huge difference for our shelter by reducing that population.
Thank you. Fran, do you have a magic wand?
Oh, yeah, I got a big magic wand. I'd like to also talk about backyard breeders, because that adds to the population that comes into the shelter. And I'm not sure, but I think the law says if you breed more than one litter a year, you are a breeder, and you need a license with the Department of Agriculture. So people need to be aware of that, because they think it's wonderful to let the children see the birth of a litter of dogs or cats, and all it does is add to the population, because when you can no longer adopt out or sell your puppies or your kittens, what do you do with them? You bring them to the shelter, and if they are overcrowded or they have nobody that wants to adopt them, what happens? So my magic wand is spay and neuter. Do not become a backyard breeder. Do not say that your child needs to view that. Go to the zoo and watch a litter of pandas being born, but you don't need to see the kittens and the puppies. So spay and neuter is the answer.
Okay. Shanna, do you have a magic wand?
I definitely do. Definitely spay neuter, and you know, I would love to see the day when we don't have any animals in the shelter, and it has gone down tremendously since we've had a vet on staff. But spay neuter is the key. We don't need any more animals. I mean, we don't need any more breeding.
Okay. Detective?
Well, if I had my magic wand, we'd stop all animal cruelty and animal fighting. Not naive enough to believe that we can do that right now, but as we raise the awareness, either between our police officers and the police department and the community, you know, report these things. Tell us what's going on. We can't be everywhere all the time. We have people like our delivery drivers, our mail carriers. They see these dogs and these cats every day. They see the situations. If they can report those to us, we can get out there and we can take a look at it, see if there actually is cruelty or neglect, and we can do something about it. But if it's not reported to us, we can't do anything.
Thank you. Sherwin?
Definitely spay and neuter, and just personally, I used to help drive, give baths and drive up animals to go up north. Up north, there's not the same situation we have here of needing to euthanize pets. So spay and neuter. But two things I want to touch on. Here in Cobb County, we're a metro county, we're cosmopolitan, we've got our own new fancy Braves stadium coming, and I think we have gotten together and decided that while it's in our southern culture of taking your dog out back and shooting it, whether it's because it's attacked someone or it's sick, we've decided from the prosecutor standpoint and law enforcement that that's not appropriate. If you feel like your dog needs to go on to heaven, which all dogs go to heaven, you can take it to the shelter. It's an open shelter. Your dog is sick. You don't want your dog. Please do not shoot your dog. I would say that. Second thing is a situation called pet flipping. It's an occurrence with some disreputable rescues who find high dollar worth purebred animals that are clearly owned by someone. However, they take them, put them up for high adoption fees, and adopt them. I would like to let all the viewers know that in Cobb County, if you find a stray animal that's lost, you must report it to the shelter. You cannot take in that animal or give it to your favorite rescue and have that. Please take the animal to the shelter. It's the best way owners can get their pets back. So those are just my little tidbits.
Thank you. Chris?
And I would have to agree with just awareness, and I think general awareness for the community to understand the resources that are out there, that if you see animal abuse, that you see something, say something. But the shelter in particular, I'm also a lifelong resident of Cobb County. I grew up in Ackworth. I live in Powder Springs now. And, until probably a couple of years ago, I had no idea the shelter was there. My wife and I think saw something about kind of an open adoption. There were reduced fees, or maybe it was free that weekend if you adopted sometime on Saturday. And we went out and looked at the facility, saw it. It is an amazing facility. Lots of great people working there. Great animals. I have a pet myself. So if you're going to adopt an animal, if you're looking for one, please go to the shelter. There's no need to go out and buy a pet, a purebred of any kind. Just go out to the shelter and adopt.
Great. Thank you all for your magic wands, and we hope that at some point someone can come forward and help you fulfill that wish with that magic wand. And speaking of wishes, One thing that we like to end with, all of our panels with, is information. We've shared a lot of information about each of your agencies, but any upcoming events, any ways that people can help, or just any last minute comments that you would like to share, now's your opportunity to share that with our live audience and our viewing audience. And Fran, I'm going to put you on the spot and start with you if you don't mind. So just final comments.
Okay, we have the Forever Fest adoption event at Cobb County on May 14th. We have vendors, we have silent auction items, we have food, we have a DJ. It's a lot of fun. We have organizations at that event as opposed to arts and crafts. The arts and crafts is the Art Barks and Purrs. That is June 18th. That's also at the shelter. And again, we have the food, we have the DJ, we have silent auction. It's fundraisers. My group is doing a beer tasting on the Whitlock next door to Gabriel's on April 1st. So come and enjoy beer tasting. It's a $10 donation, and we have some silent auction items. We do different events like that to raise money to help support some of the efforts at the shelter, and also to pay for some trap, neuter, and release, because we are getting some requests from the shelter for people that have 8 or 10 cats that they need homes for because they're just reproducing. So we are trying to help with that also. And we haven't touched on puppy mills, which is a real sore subject with me. But puppy mills, if you're not aware of what they are, they're people around the country that breed for money. And puppy mills are animals that are being sold in pet stores. So again, we encourage you to adopt from the shelter, adopt from rescues, do not buy.
Thank you. Captain Dane.
Absolutely. Actually, I just want to touch on one thing that we didn't hit tonight, and that's animal safety. And that's something to me that was, before I left the shelter, that was a big concern of mine, because I started realizing how many thousands of cases a year happen across the United States where especially children or older men and women that can't defend themselves as well, where they're seriously injured by animals or killed by animals. And typically what people don't realize is there are telltale signs that an animal is going to be aggressive. And, they show you. They don't speak, but they do show you through the signs. And we don't have time to really get into tonight in this particular forum about the animal safety, but I would ask that anyone who sees this that would like to get some more information on that, to stop by our shelter, speak with one of our shelter employees down there, and tell them you'd like to get some information on how to protect your children from your family pet, because most of the attacks do occur from the family pet. And there are little things that you can teach your child to do if they run into a stray animal on the street, and that they need to understand that this is not the family pet. This is a stray animal, and we don't know how it's going to react. And things that adults can do. And because most of the cases that I've witnessed in our county, with a little bit of prevention from an adult being involved in the interaction between the child and the animal, some really serious bite cases that we've had could have been prevented. And for something as simple as putting a child-proof latch on the dog's cage in the backyard, so that the 6-year-old and the 7-year-old don't go out there and let the chow out in the backyard unsupervised. And then we have a serious bite case. So I'd like to make people aware that we do have programs for that. We have information that you can get from our shelter, and it's really something great to protect your kid. We do some of these programs in schools. We'll do them at our public safety block parties. We'll have people there that do that, and hopefully we're going to integrate that program in with our safety village. And once we integrate that in, then we'll be able to hit all the 3rd and the 4th grade and the 5th grade children that come through there for education.
I was going to ask that, but I didn't want to commit the safety village to anything, so thank you for bringing that up. Shannon?
I wanted to let everybody know that our shelter is open 9:30 to 5:30 Tuesday through Saturday, and Sunday 2 to 5. So please adopt. And our phone number is 770-499-4136.
Thank you. Detective?
Just reiterate on the education part, we are providing the annual training now for our police officers. We're going through those classes, educating them about animal cruelty, animal fighting, the links to domestic violence and other crimes that exist. Another initiative that we have that's hitting the streets in April, we're going out to all the precincts with the laser thermometers that Fran had donated. We'll be educating the police officers there how to use those, when the animals are in distress, and when to make the call that they need to remove that animal from the vehicle. We also have in May, we're working with the Georgia Equine Rescue League. We will have, on May the 18th, we will be doing training for police officers, animal control officers, prosecutors, and anybody in the legal system, how to investigate and prosecute the horse crimes or equine crimes. So we're doing that. We're working hard to bring those programs to Cobb County and become that training center for the metro area.
Very nice. Sherwin?
I would like to talk about a website I encourage everyone to visit, Spot Abuse, SPOTABUSE.org, O-R-G. This is a campaign initiative that was started by the Milwaukee, Wisconsin DA, who through research, and this is a statistic I didn't mention, but in 70% of cases of domestic violence, there have been threats to or actual harm done to the animal in that home. And that's a huge statistic. And the DA in Wisconsin realized while people may be hesitant to pick up the phone and call police if there's domestic violence, people are more comfortable or willing to do so if they see an animal abuse or animal cruelty situation. So the commercials, which I really encourage you to watch, show that when there is that situation, the child or the intimate partner could be next. So Spot Abuse is a great educational website. I encourage all to visit.
Thank you.
And I would echo what Sherwin said, the link between domestic violence and animal abuse and child abuse and things of that nature. It is real. We see it as the prosecutors up here. We know it's out there and exists. If you see something, say something. Obviously, you can call animal control. Anytime you think a crime has occurred, do not hesitate to call 911. That is what they're there for. We have great responders here in Cobb County that will be right on that and investigate things appropriately. So if you see something, say something.
Great. Thank you. So thank you to all of our distinguished panel members. And even if you are not a pet lover, there are ways that you can support in the community through donations, through time. If you don't want to own a pet yourself, you can still help support the organizations. And at a minimum, we can all make people aware of the issue. So thank you, each and every one of you, for being here. To the Neighborhood Safety Commission, thank you for hosting once again a very educational panel. And Trish, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for attending and watching on Cobb TV this evening. We especially want to thank our dynamic panel members and moderator. We are honored to have each of you as our moderator and panel member this evening. Our community is very fortunate to have each of you serving and dedicating your life to public safety and public service in the police, district attorney's office, solicitor's office, animal control, and in rescue services. We commend you for your daily dedication to serve, protect, prosecute, educate, and to improve the quality of life for all Cobb citizens and pet owners. We certainly appreciate and thank you for your daily service. A special thank you to Cornelius for broadcasting us this evening. Thank you for joining us this evening. We invite you to watch all of our 2013, 2014, 2015, and 2016 panel discussions on Cobb TV or link from the Neighborhood Safety Commission. Please join us Wednesday, April the 20th at 7 p.m. when our topic will be drug abuse. Thank you so much and good evening.